So how does that work? Interesting. I don't know how that works. What am I talking about? Storing up treasures in heaven. How can you store up something that you give away constantly? I don't understand how that works. Logistically, if you have stuff, you can put it in a bin somewhere and store it. But if you've got stuff that you get and you give away, how do you store up for heaven? Is it like a point system? You know, my father was a teacher, and to get class participation, he handed out points. You answer a question, 2 points. 2 points. 2 points. And he would sign it. He would initial on the bottom. The only problem with that is that people got 2 points, and they'd take the little slip, and they'd get others, and they'd trace his name, his signature, and then they'd take the little sheets, and they'd copy. You know, they'd forge his name, they'd forge his things, so he had a stamp. But at the end of the quarter, you had 500 points. You get another grade, up your grade. So when he'd ask questions, boom, all the hands would go up, and he'd have to pick and choose who would answer correctly. Mind you, correct answers get points. Interesting. The point system. Well, that's not quite how it works either. Point systems, that's an old notion of plus column and minus column, and this column's higher, so you get the golden pass to go to heaven. It not quite works that way. That's where grace comes in. You store up treasures that matter to us now. What matters to Christ and what matters to God, those things. Part of this celebration, should I call it, this Ash Wednesday service, this Ash Wednesday theme, if you want to call it that, is one of repentance, is one of leveling the playing field, of making sure that everyone is playing with the same deck, the same number of cards in their deck. You get the ashes on the forehead to symbolize that we're all connected, not only to one another, but we're connected to the created world, that we are part of nature, we're part of what happens in our world. We sometimes forget that. We sometimes forget that we have ashes on our foreheads. It's human nature to put our best foot forward. If you read any resumes, you know that there's lots of best foot forward. And you need to do that. You need to find what you're best at and put it on there. Sometimes when you interview with somebody, the resume looks on one thing and the person looks like, is this the same resume with the person? Is it kind of a little different? I'm getting a different feel. Sometimes in the candidacy process from the synod, we screen people who are wanting to become pastors or associates in ministry, roster leaders, and they give us all the paperwork, their psychological evaluations. We read this stuff and go, I don't know. I see some red flags here, here, here. Let's ask the candidate, about these things and see what he or she has to say. And we have in our minds going into the interview of saying, well, I think it's going to either be a postponement or a no. We meet with a candidate for an hour, we ask questions, we have a conversation, and it's different. It's not quite the same. They have a better sense about them when they're face-to-face in an interview. It's not quite like the paperwork. Some of the red marks are there because sometimes we can't put everything in sheet form, in resume form, in application form. There's more to us than meets the eye that we can put on, 5 sheets of paper or whatever it is. So to have some of these things coming to us, to put our best foot forward. Of course, Jesus had a complaint against those Pharisees and those others that wanted to just simply have it out there for their own sakes and not necessarily for anybody they're caring about. Their congregations, their synagogue, the people, they just want a name for themselves. And that, of course, doesn't happen nowadays with anybody, does it? But this season of Lent is a time for us to take stock of who we really are, to take a good look at the real person behind it. And sometimes we don't see even our own selves clearly. Sometimes it's a matter of talking with a close friend and say, I perceive this in you, and I never thought that way before, but I guess you're right. That is a fuller sense of who I am. It's like asking your young one, if they're, really kind of young, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever that is. Yeah, clean your room. When you clean your room, you can watch TV. You can do that. And so within a couple minutes, they come barreling out of their room. All clean. You go look at the room. It's great. Everything's picked up and looks pretty nice and neat. And then you say, well, let's see here a second. Okay. Oh, what's under the bed? Well, sometimes it's all the clothes shoved under the bed quick. Or you open up the closet and things come falling out at you and think, okay, now we have to take a little bit of time and do this right. Okay, I'll sit in this chair and I'll read your story while you do the work of cleaning up the right way. And then after that, it's that connection of sitting down in the chair and not necessarily doing the work for them, but being with them, presence with them, and reading a story to keep them occupied so that they know that you're there. And so they get the room cleaned up after about 2 or 3 hours, and 4 books later. And then it's bedtime, so it's too late to see a show anyway. But it's that, it's a give and take. It's that sense of you're not alone in this, and let me help you with whatever I can do. I don't want to do it for you, but I want to be present with you so that you have some company, that you're cleaning out your closet, you're cleaning under the bed, that your room is now clean. In this season of Lent, we take a look at ourselves and we say, well, I've got this hidden in my closet. I've got certain skeletons in my closet that may or may not need to come out now, depending on how I'm feeling. But there are certain things in my closet I need to clean out and kind of get out in the open and just clear away. We Scandinavians and Germans have a good sense of guilt that after about a year or so, we're walking down because we have so much stuff that we're carrying that we just can't handle it all, and we just need to say, clear it out. I mean, Jesus died on the cross once. We don't have to keep crucifying ourselves every day for all what we've done or not done. And so we lighten the load. And in this process of cleaning out our closets, some of the stuff in our past, some of the things that we don't want to face, that we know that Christ is in the chair, in that room with us, present, reading us stories per se, but never are we alone in this process. No matter if it's painful, joyful, whatever we're feeling, it's that sense that we're in this together. And as a community, we walk with ashes on our foreheads. We know that we are connected, that we've all got dirty laundry in our closets that we need to get rid of. We've all got things in our past that we need to get rid of. We all have some sort of pain that we're dealing with, however that is, if it's physical chronic pain or emotional pain from years past, or even spiritual pain of being wounded in some way by a church, a pastor, or whomever that we have to deal with in some respects. Maybe not all at once, but there is that realization that it's all there and that we all have it. I think about, in our society today that celebrates, physical fitness. And that's something that we can do. You can measure it. You can take your body fat index. You can take measurements of your waist. You can weigh yourself and see progress. You can think about your financial fitness and where the books are at the end of the month, your budget and the debt load, if you have debt loads and all those kinds of things. You can measure that and see how your progress is going. And you go from there. Some of the tougher ones, your emotional fitness, that's tougher to gauge. How do we do that? Do we have a sense of feeling better? Do we have a sense of peace? Do we have a sense of empowerment? Do we have a sense of pride in what we're doing? Do we have a sense of whatever it is? It's harder to measure. It's tougher. And then you go to spiritual fitness, and what does that mean? How is that measured? That's a tough one. That is something sometimes we just kind of push off to the side until we need it. And at that point, the muscles are pretty much atrophied, and we bring it back, and it's hard to rest our laurels on spiritual fitness that is somewhat lagging because it's hard to gauge It's hard to measure in the society that needs to quantify things. It's very tough to quantify. And so sometimes it gets forgotten. Well, in Advent, in Lent, there are specific times to kind of focus and say, well, some of our spiritual disciplines, and pastors are just as much to blame too as anybody else, to make sure that we have a spiritual life that we can hang our hat on, something that we can enrich and make grow and happen, and be connected to God in certain ways that we weren't connected before. I mentioned that I'm not going to give anything up. The sugar, the pizza. I've done it for 3 years. That's fine. I don't need to do it anymore. I'm on a good plane now. But what I think I might do is something very different, like journaling. And I told the confirmation kids after about 30 or 40 pages in a day when I'm off on tangents everywhere, then I can start the next day. But to do something where I'm kind of nurturing that thing that I don't normally would do. But Lent may be a time to kind of do that. And even if I need to air out dirty laundry in the words on a page, sometimes it's very, very helpful to see it in print in front of you, or to have a meditation time, a time of silence. The confirmation kids, do you have time for silence? We finished up the Lord's Prayer. Do you have time for prayer? Martin Luther would say, the more I have to do, the more prayer time I need. Well, that seems counterproductive. How does that work? If you have more to do, you won't have less time to pray. So then I need more prayer time so that I can completely focus and get a sense of where I'm at with what I need to do. Ashes on the forehead to symbolize that we're all connected, that we all have dirty laundry, that we can't live a life necessarily inside out, but with integrity. What you see is what you get in a lot of respects. Who I am is who I appear to be. And Lent is a great equalizer in that. It's the start of that symbolic journey. Maybe not so symbolic. Maybe it's a journey that we all need to take seriously, that we all need to take, maybe even joyfully, and grasp what it means for spiritual health, a spiritual life, a spiritual connectedness, to realize that, yes, indeed, black marks, that we all see each other. We see other people on the streets with black marks on their foreheads. It symbolizes the connectedness that we have. The Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, there's a connectedness to the four-leggeds, the two-leggeds, and we're all part of this system we call nature, this created world that God gives for us. Time of celebration, to realize that we're not alone in our closet cleaning things out. Realize that we all have closets that need to be cleaned out, but the presence of God is with us in that cleaning out, giving us sometimes a little nudge here and there to help us, to give us guidance, what we desperately need sometimes. And to know that although we seem to be separate and individual, we have that sense of community, that God-given sense of community. Like when you go into a locker room, there's 3 people in the whole health club. Guess where the guy's locker is? Right next to yours. It couldn't be 4 aisles down the street. It couldn't be 4 aisles that way. It's right next to you. And how does that work? I say, well, that's just God's plan for community. We're all connected. And that's something that we get a sense of if we take it seriously during Lent and Ash Wednesday to get us going on our journey, a kickstart to something new, transformative, that we can take with us and keep going because God is with us. Amen.